The encounter. The city lay in ruins. Broken buildings stood like skeletons of a once thriving civilization. Smoke rose into the orange-tinted sky, and the faint sounds of battle echoed in the distance. Humanity's war against the alien invaders had pushed both sides to their limits. Ethan Cross crouched behind a half-destroyed wall, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. Sweat dripped down his forehead, mixing with the dirt and blood on his face. He had been fighting for days without proper rest, but he didn't have the luxury to stop. Survival was the only option. A sharp noise caught his attention. He turned his head, scanning the area with trained precision. His sharp green eyes locked onto a group of Zerithian soldiers moving through the rubble. The aliens were tall, with silvery skin that shimmered faintly under the dim sunlight. Their armor gleamed, a stark contrast to the devastation around them. Ethan silently adjusted his rifle and took aim. He wasn't afraid of these aliens anymore. They bled just like humans did. The first shot rang out, precise and deadly. One of the soldiers dropped instantly, a clean hit to the head. The rest of the group scattered, shouting orders in their guttural alien language. Ethan moved quickly, staying low as he repositioned himself. 2 more shots. 2 more soldiers fell. The remaining aliens panicked, firing wildly in Ethan's direction. Their weapons hissed, sending bolts of glowing energy that melted through stone and steel. But Ethan was faster, smarter. He used the debris to his advantage, slipping through the ruins like a ghost. Finally, there was only one alien left. Ethan stepped out from the shadows, his rifle trained on the figure. The alien was different from the others. His armor was more elaborate, decorated with intricate patterns that marked him as someone important. A golden crest gleamed on his chest, and a faint aura of authority surrounded him. The alien raised his hands, his weapon falling to the ground. He spoke in heavily accented English, his voice calm yet commanding. "Wait, do not kill me." Ethan's finger hovered over the trigger. He had no sympathy for these invaders, but something about this alien gave him pause. "Give me one good reason," Ethan growled. "I am Prince Kale of Zerithia," the alien said, standing tall despite his apparent surrender. "If you kill me, you will only ensure more war. My people will seek revenge. But if you spare me," Kale's silvery eyes gleamed with intelligence, "I will repay you with a gift beyond your imagination. The life debt." Ethan frowned. "A life debt? What's that supposed to mean?" Kale hesitated, his expression unreadable. "It is an ancient Cerithian custom. If one's life is saved, they must repay that debt in full. Whatever you desire, I will make it happen. Power, riches, name it, and it will be yours." Ethan narrowed his eyes, studying the alien. This wasn't the first time he'd heard grand promises during this war. But Kel's tone was different. He spoke with a strange sincerity that Ethan couldn't ignore. Before Ethan could respond, a sudden explosion shook the ground. The shockwave threw both men to the ground, and debris rained down around them. Ethan scrambled to his feet, his rifle ready. A second group of Zerithian soldiers emerged from the smoke, their weapons raised. "Get down," Ethan shouted at Kale, firing at the incoming enemies. The prince hesitated for a split second, then dropped to the ground. Ethan moved with practiced efficiency, taking down the soldiers one by one. He didn't think about why he was protecting the alien prince. His instincts had taken over. When the smoke cleared, Ethan and Kale were the only ones left standing. The prince rose slowly, brushing dust off his armor. He looked at Ethan with a mixture of respect and disbelief. "You saved me again," Kale said, his voice quieter this time. Ethan lowered his rifle but kept his guard up. "Don't thank me yet. I don't trust you, alien." Kale nodded, his expression serious. "I understand your mistrust, but I swear to you, I will honor my life debt. I will give you something no human has ever received before." Ethan frowned, unsure what to make of the prince's words. "I don't need anything from you. Just stay out of my way." Kale stepped closer, his silvery eyes locking onto Ethan's. "You will need me, human. Sooner than you think." Ethan didn't respond. He turned and walked away, his rifle still in his hands. Cale watched him go, a faint smile playing on his lips. As Ethan disappeared into the ruins, Cale muttered to himself, "This human has no idea what he has just set into motion." Above them, the sky darkened, and the faint hum of an alien warship echoed through the air. Something far greater than either man was on the horizon. The Royal Deal. The alien warship hovered silently above the crumbling remains of the city, its sleek, obsidian design casting an ominous shadow over the battlefield. Inside its grand halls, lit by pulsating blue lights, Ethan Cross felt entirely out of place. 2 days ago, he was a soldier fighting for survival. Now he was a guest, or perhaps a prisoner, on an alien royal vessel. Prince Cale had insisted that Ethan be brought aboard, claiming it was part of his life debt. Ethan stood in the center of an enormous chamber, his boots echoing against the metallic floor. The air was thick with an unidentifiable scent, sharp yet oddly sweet. Around him, alien figures whispered in their native language, their glowing eyes occasionally glancing in his direction. At the far end of the chamber, a throne of shimmering crystal loomed. Prince Cale sat upon it, his posture regal, his expression calm. He was dressed in ceremonial robes adorned with intricate patterns, his golden crest shining brighter than before. Ethan crossed his arms, his expression hard. "I'm still not sure why I'm here. I saved your life. That's it. You don't owe me anything." Cale leaned forward, his silvery eyes gleaming. "You misunderstand, human. The life debt is not a mere token of gratitude. It is a sacred bond, one that cannot be ignored." "Fine," Ethan said, his tone edged with impatience. "Then pay me and let me go. I don't need your sacred bond or your alien customs." Cale tilted his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You think too small. Money, weapons, technology. These are trivial things. What I offer you is far greater." The doors behind Cale hissed open, and Ethan instinctively reached for the pistol at his side. A tall figure entered the chamber, her presence commanding and undeniable. She was unlike any alien Ethan had ever seen. Her silvery skin glowed faintly, her violet eyes sharp and piercing. She wore a flowing gown that seemed to shimmer and shift like liquid metal, and her dark hair was braided with threads of gold. She was both regal and untouchable, like a queen stepping down from the heavens. "This," Cale said, gesturing toward the woman, "is my sister, Princess Lyra." Ethan blinked, momentarily at a loss for words. "Your sister?" Lyra's gaze shifted to Ethan, and her lips curled into a cold smile. "So this is the human you've chosen to drag into our affairs. He doesn't look like much." Ethan bristled. "Nice to meet you too, Princess." Cale rose from his throne, his voice carrying an air of finality. "As repayment for my life debt, I offer you my sister." The room fell silent. Ethan stared at Cale, convinced he must have misheard. "You're joking, right?" Cale's expression didn't waver. "It is an honor, human. Lyra will serve as your ally, your advisor, your companion, whatever you wish. She will ensure that my debt to you is fulfilled." Lyra's eyes widened, and for the first time, her confident demeanor cracked. "You cannot be serious, Cale. I am not some bargaining chip to be handed off to a human." Cale turned to her, his voice calm but firm. "You know our customs, Lyra. The life debt must be repaid, and this is the only way." Ethan shook his head, stepping forward. "Look, I didn't ask for this. I don't need a princess tagging along, and I sure as hell don't want to be part of whatever this is." Lyra crossed her arms, glaring at both men. "Good, because I don't intend to go anywhere with you." Cale's gaze hardened. "It is not up for debate. The decision has been made." Lyra let out a sharp laugh, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You think you can control me, brother? You're a fool." Cale stepped closer to her, his voice dropping to a dangerous tone. "This is not about control. It is about honor. You will do this for our people." Ethan watched the exchange, unsure whether to feel amused or irritated. "Great family dynamics you've got here. Real heartwarming." Lyra turned to him, her eyes narrowing. "Don't think for a second that I'm doing this for you, human. Trust me," Ethan said, his tone dry. "The feeling's mutual." Kale raised a hand, silencing both of them. "Enough. You may despise this arrangement now, but in time, you will understand its importance." Ethan exhaled sharply, his frustration mounting. "If I say no to this whole life-debt thing, what happens then?" Cal's expression darkened. "Then you insult the Zerithian royal family. Such an insult would be seen as a declaration of war." Ethan muttered a curse under his breath. "Of course it would." Lyra stepped closer to Ethan, her violet eyes blazing. "If I must be bound to you, human, let me make one thing clear. I am not your servant, your ally, or your friend. Stay out of my way, and I'll stay out of yours." Ethan smirked. "Sounds perfect to me." As the tension in the room reached its peak, a loud alarm blared, cutting through the chamber. Cal's expression shifted to one of urgency. "We are under attack," he said, his voice sharp. "Prepare yourselves." Lyra and Ethan exchanged a tense glance before turning toward the source of the alarm. Whatever personal grievances they had, they were about to face a far greater threat together. A fragile alliance. The icy wind howled through the alien wasteland as Ethan Cross trudged forward, his boots sinking into the shimmering blue sand. He adjusted the strap of his plasma rifle, glancing behind him. The alien princess, Lyra, followed a few steps behind, her expression as cold as the air around them. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, pulling her metallic cloak tighter around her. "I should be on my way back to the royal fleet, not wandering through the middle of nowhere with you." Ethan stopped and turned to face her, his sharp green eyes narrowing. "You think I wanted this? Your brother shoved this alliance down my throat. So unless you want to go back and explain to him why you're walking away, I suggest you keep moving." Lyra's violet eyes flared with annoyance, but she said nothing. Instead, she swept past Ethan, her head held high. Even here, surrounded by desolation, she carried herself like royalty. Ethan shook his head and followed her, muttering under his breath. "Great, stuck with a princess who thinks she's better than everyone else. Just my luck." The landscape around them was alien and surreal. Jagged, crystalline structures jutted out of the ground like frozen lightning bolts, glowing faintly in the pale light of Zerithia's twin moons. The air was thin, carrying a metallic tang that left a strange aftertaste in Ethan's mouth. They had been walking for hours, guided only by the coordinates Cal had provided before their abrupt departure from the royal ship. According to the prince, these coordinates would lead them to someone, or something, critical to the rebellion against the Zerithian Empire. But Ethan had his doubts. "What exactly are we looking for out here?" he asked, breaking the silence. Lyra glanced over her shoulder, her expression guarded. "Information. That's all you need to know." Ethan scowled. "Information. You dragged me halfway across this alien desert for that. If you're keeping secrets, princess, I'm not sticking around to get killed because of your games." She stopped abruptly and turned to face him, her violet eyes blazing with frustration. "You think I want to be here with you, human? My brother sent me on this mission because he couldn't trust anyone else. And now, thanks to his ridiculous life debt, I'm stuck babysitting you." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "I don't need a babysitter. And if you think I'm just going to follow orders blindly, you're mistaken." Before Lyra could respond, a faint hum filled the air. Both of them froze, their eyes scanning the horizon. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. In the distance, a dark shape appeared, moving rapidly toward them. "Get down," Ethan barked, diving behind one of the crystalline structures. Lyra followed, her movements swift and practiced. The dark shape resolved into a Zerithian hovercraft, its sleek design cutting through the air like a blade. "They found us," Lyra whispered, her voice tight. "Who?" Ethan demanded. Lyra hesitated, then muttered, "The prince's loyalists. They won't stop until we're dead." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Fantastic. Any more surprises you want to share?" The hovercraft circled above them, its weapons glowing ominously. Ethan glanced at Lyra, who was gripping a small device in her hand. "What's that?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a button on the device, and a sudden pulse of energy erupted from it. The hovercraft shuddered, its lights flickering before it veered off course and crashed into the sand with a deafening explosion. Ethan stared at the wreckage, then at Lyra. "You could have done that sooner." Lyra smirked, tucking the device back into her cloak. "You didn't ask." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "Great. What now?" Lyra's expression turned serious. "Now we move faster. That was just a scout. The rest of them won't be far behind." Ethan nodded, his instincts kicking in. Whatever this mission was, it had just gotten a lot more complicated. As they resumed their trek through the alien wasteland, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Lyra was hiding something. And from the way she avoided his questions, he knew he was right. But for now, survival came first. The coordinates etched into his wristpad glowed faintly, leading them closer to their mysterious destination. Whatever awaited them, Ethan was certain of one thing. This fragile alliance wouldn't last long. The rebellion's truth. The underground chamber buzzed with faint energy, its walls glowing softly with alien inscriptions that seemed alive. The air was humid and carried the faint smell of metal and moss. Ethan cross-stepped cautiously, his plasma rifle ready as he scanned the room. Princess Lyra walked beside him, her posture stiff and her eyes sharp, as though ready to strike at the first sign of danger. "Relax, human," Lyra muttered, not looking at him. "If they wanted to kill us, we'd already be dead." "Comforting," Ethan replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Ahead of them, a figure emerged from the shadows. Clad in dark, battle-worn armor, the alien was taller than Lyra, but bore the same silvery skin and sharp features. His eyes glowed faintly green, a striking contrast to Lyra's violet. "You've brought a human here," the alien hissed, his voice low and dangerous. Lyra stepped forward, meeting the alien's gaze without flinching. "I had no choice, Tarek. He saved Cal's life, and now carries the life debt. Besides," she added, glancing at Ethan, "he's proven to be useful. Glad to know I'm not just dead weight." Ethan muttered under his breath. Tarek ignored him, focusing entirely on Lyra. "You shouldn't have come, sister. It's not safe for you here." "Since when has anything been safe for us?" Lyra shot back. Her voice carried a rare softness, betraying a flicker of vulnerability beneath her otherwise icy demeanor. "We need your help, Tarek. The rebellion is running out of time, and Cal is more dangerous than ever." At the mention of Cal, Tarek's expression darkened. He gestured for them to follow and led them deeper into the chamber. The walls pulsed faintly, and Ethan noticed how the inscriptions shifted and rearranged themselves as they moved. It was unnerving, like the chamber itself was alive and watching them. Finally, they entered a larger room, its center dominated by a holographic projection of the Zerithian star system. Dozens of alien figures were gathered around it, their faces etched with determination and exhaustion. "This is the heart of the rebellion," Tarek said, turning to face them. "And you've put it at risk by bringing him here." Ethan stepped forward, meeting Tarek's glare. "I didn't ask to be here, and I'm not your enemy. But if you've got a problem with me, say it outright." Tarek's lips curled into a snarl, but Lyra stepped between them. "Enough," she said sharply. "We don't have time for this." She turned to the gathered rebels. "Cal's plans are escalating. He's consolidating power and framing this rebellion as a terrorist threat to unite the Empire against us. If we don't act now, we'll lose what little support we have left. One of the rebels, a female Zerithian with crimson eyes, stepped forward. What do you propose, Princess? You're the heir to the throne. Surely you have more influence than we do. Lyra hesitated, her gaze flickering to Ethan. Kale has moved beyond politics. He's working with an outside force, a shadow faction far more dangerous than anything we've faced before. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the group like a storm cloud. Tarek crossed his arms. If what you say is true, then we're already too late. The rebellion isn't equipped to fight an enemy like that. Maybe not, Lyra admitted, but we have something they don't. Him. She pointed to Ethan, whose eyebrows shot up in surprise. Me? He asked. You've survived where others haven't, Lyra said. You fought Cal's forces and lived to tell the tale. You're unpredictable, resourceful, and most importantly, you're human. They'll underestimate you. Ethan shook his head. I didn't sign up for this. I'm not some pawn in your war. Lyra stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. You want out of this. Fine. But if you walk away now, Cal's forces will come after you. They'll destroy everything you care about. This isn't just about us anymore, Ethan. It's about survival for both our worlds. Ethan clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. He hated being dragged into someone else's fight, but Lyra's words rang true. He couldn't ignore the stakes, no matter how much he wanted to. Before he could respond, an alarm blared through the chamber. The holographic map flickered, replaced by a warning signal. They've found us, Tarek said grimly. The rebels scrambled into action, grabbing weapons and preparing for a fight. Lyra turned to Ethan, her expression fierce. Still think you don't belong here? Ethan smirked, raising his rifle. Let's just hope your rebellion's worth saving. As the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the tunnels, Ethan took a deep breath, preparing himself for the battle ahead. Whatever truths the rebellion held, he was about to find out the hard way. The betrayal. The stars above flickered like cold, distant eyes, indifferent to the chaos unfolding below. Ethan Cross crouched low behind a jagged boulder, his plasma rifle gripped tightly in his hands. The desert night was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of an approaching enemy craft. Beside him, Princess Lyra was focused, her violet eyes scanning the horizon for movement. You sure your brother's forces tracked us here? Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. Lyra didn't look at him, her expression unreadable. Kale doesn't take failure lightly. He'll send everything he has to destroy us. Ethan frowned, glancing at her. Something about her tone felt off. She was calm, too calm, for someone who was supposedly being hunted. Before he could press further, a sharp light sliced through the darkness, illuminating their hiding spot. Move, Lyra hissed, grabbing Ethan's arm and pulling him toward a narrow ravine. The ground shook as a barrage of energy blasts rained down behind them, turning the boulder into molten slag. Ethan didn't need convincing. He ran, keeping low, his instincts screaming that this wasn't just a simple ambush. They slid into the ravine, its jagged walls offering a temporary shield. Ethan leaned against the cold stone, catching his breath. Any more bright ideas, Princess? He muttered, his frustration bubbling to the surface. Lyra didn't respond immediately. She was looking at the sky, her expression distant. Finally, she said, We can't outrun them. We need to draw them into a trap. Ethan's eyes narrowed. And how exactly do you plan to do that? We're outnumbered and outgunned. Lyra turned to him, her gaze sharp. You're the one always boasting about your human ingenuity. Figure it out. Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but a sudden realization struck him. You've been leading them to us, haven't you? Lyra's silence was all the confirmation he needed. Ethan stepped back, his grip tightening on his rifle. You betrayed me. After everything, you're still working for him. Her expression softened, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice low. "Kale gave me no choice. If I didn't play along, he would have killed the rebellion leaders outright. This was the only way to buy time." "Time for what?" Ethan demanded. Lyra stepped closer, her voice urgent. "To find out what Cal is really planning. He's not just after the rebellion, Ethan. He's working with something far worse, a shadow faction that wants to wipe out both our worlds." Ethan stared at her, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to trust her, to believe that she had been forced into this, but another part screamed at him to cut ties and get as far away as possible. Before he could decide, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A low rumble echoed through the ravine, growing louder with each passing second. "They're here," Lyra said, her voice tight. Ethan took a deep breath, his instincts taking over. "If this is a trap, Princess, you'd better pray it doesn't blow up in your face." She didn't reply, instead pulling out a small device from her cloak. With a flick of her wrist, the device emitted a high-pitched whine. "What's that?" Ethan asked, his eyes narrowing. "A signal disruptor," Lyra said. "It'll give us a few minutes to turn the tide. After that, we're on our own." Ethan nodded, his mind already working through the possibilities. "Fine, but if you cross me again, I'll make sure your brother doesn't get the chance to finish the job." Lyra's gaze hardened. "Fair enough." The enemy craft appeared overhead, its sleek design glinting in the starlight. Several figures disembarked, their weapons glowing ominously as they moved toward the ravine. Ethan gritted his teeth, raising his rifle. "Here we go." As the first shots rang out, Ethan and Lyra fought side by side, their uneasy alliance tested by every second of the firefight. But even as they held their ground, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the real betrayal was yet to come. And this time, it wouldn't just be about survival. The hidden enemy. The underground base hummed with alien energy, the walls pulsating faintly like a living organism. Ethan Cross felt the weight of the atmosphere pressing against him as he moved cautiously through the narrow corridor. His rifle was at the ready, his steps silent. Behind him, Princess Lyra followed, her movements fluid and purposeful. But something about the silence unsettled him. It wasn't just the quiet. It was the absence of life. The base was supposed to be crawling with Zerithian rebels, and Cal's forces locked in a standoff. Yet, so far, they had encountered nothing. "It's too quiet," Ethan muttered, his voice low. Lyra nodded, her violet eyes scanning the faintly glowing walls. Something isn't right. The energy signatures are still active, but there's no sign of anyone. Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon. "Maybe your brother's forces already cleared them out." Lyra shook her head. "If Cal had been here, he'd have left a trail. This feels different." Ethan stopped and turned to her, his voice sharp. "Different how? You've been holding out on me, haven't you?" Lyra hesitated, then sighed. "There's something Cal didn't tell me. Something he's been hiding from everyone. Whatever it is, it's connected to this place." Before Ethan could respond, a faint clicking sound echoed through the corridor. Both of them froze, their eyes snapping to the source. The sound grew louder, more distinct, like claws tapping against metal. Ethan raised his rifle, his heart pounding. "Get ready," Lyra whispered, drawing a blade that glowed faintly with alien energy. The corridor ahead suddenly darkened, the pulsating lights flickering and fading. Ethan squinted into the void, his finger hovering over the trigger. Then it appeared. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its movements unnaturally smooth. It stood tall, taller than even the Zerithians, with an elongated body that seemed to shift and ripple like liquid. Its eyes glowed an unnatural green, and its limbs ended in razor-sharp claws that scraped against the walls. "What the hell is that?" Ethan hissed, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra's face paled. "It's them, the Shadow Faction." The creature let out a low guttural growl, its glowing eyes locking onto them. Then, with blinding speed, it lunged. Ethan fired instinctively. the plasma bolts lighting up the corridor. The creature moved like smoke, dodging the shots with unnatural agility. Lyra darted forward, her blade slashing through the air in a blur. The creature's scream echoed through the corridor as Lyra's blade connected, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it split, its body dividing into two smaller forms, each just as fast and deadly. "Not good," Ethan shouted, firing again. Lyra moved with precision, her blade dancing as she fended off one of the creatures. "These things aren't just soldiers," she said between strikes. "They're something far worse. They're Cal's secret weapon." Ethan cursed under his breath. "And you thought this was a good time to tell me?" "I didn't know." Lyra shot back, her blade slicing through one of the creatures. Ethan switched tactics, throwing a small explosive toward the second creature. The corridor lit up with a deafening blast, and when the smoke cleared, the shadowy form was gone. Breathing heavily, Ethan turned to Lyra. "We need to move. Now." Lyra nodded, wiping alien ichor from her blade. "There will be more. Those things don't work alone." As they ran deeper into the base, the air grew colder, and the pulsating walls began to darken. The inscriptions that had once glowed faintly now pulsed erratically, as though the base itself was reacting to their presence. Finally, they reached the heart of the base, a massive chamber dominated by a glowing sphere of energy. The sphere hovered in midair, its surface shifting and rippling like liquid light. Lyra stopped, her eyes widening in recognition. "It's a nexus. A gateway." "A gateway to what?" Ethan demanded, his rifle trained on the sphere. Lyra didn't answer. She stepped closer, her expression a mix of awe and fear. "This is what Cal has been hiding. He's not just working with the Shadow faction. He's trying to bring them here, to our dimension." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Why? What does he gain from this?" Lyra turned to him, her voice trembling. "Power. The Shadow faction promised him the throne, but he doesn't realize the cost. If he activates this gateway, it won't just bring them here. It'll destroy everything in their path." Ethan clenched his fists, his mind racing. "Then we shut it down. Now." Lyra shook her head. "It's not that simple. The Nexus is powered by a Zerithian core. If we destroy it, the entire base will collapse. And us with it." Ethan smirked, his eyes glinting with determination. "Guess we'll have to improvise." As the hum of the Nexus grew louder, the clicking sounds returned, echoing through the chamber. More shadowy figures began to emerge from the darkness, their glowing eyes fixed on Ethan and Lyra. "Looks like we've got company," Ethan said, raising his rifle. Lyra gripped her blade tightly, her expression hardening. "Then let's make it count." Together, they turned to face the oncoming horde, the glowing Nexus casting eerie shadows across the chamber. The battle for survival, and the fate of two worlds, was about to begin. The final stand. The Nexus pulsed violently, its glow illuminating the massive chamber with flashes of blinding light. The walls trembled, cracks spiderwebbing across the alien architecture as the base's core began to destabilize. Ethan Cross wiped sweat and blood from his face, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The shadow creatures circled him and Princess Lyra, their glowing green eyes filled with unrelenting hunger. "This is it," Lyra said, gripping her blade tightly. Her voice was steady, but Ethan could hear the underlying strain. "If we don't stop the Nexus now, it'll tear open the gateway and unleash them onto both our worlds." Ethan nodded, his rifle raised. "Any last tricks up your sleeve, Princess?" Lyra hesitated, her violet eyes flickering with an emotion Ethan couldn't quite place. "If we destroy the core, the Nexus collapses." But what?" Ethan demanded, his gaze shifting between her and the encroaching creatures. She took a deep breath. "The core is tied to Zerithian life force. Only someone with royal blood can overload it and survive long enough to shut it down." Ethan froze, the weight of her words sinking in. "You mean Lyra nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. It has to be me. No way, Ethan snapped. We'll find another way. I didn't come all this way just to watch you throw your life away. There is no other way, Lyra said firmly. You know that as well as I do. Before Ethan could argue further, the shadow creatures lunged. He fired a barrage of plasma shots, the searing bolts lighting up the room as the creatures screeched and dissolved into mist. Lyra moved like a whirlwind, her glowing blade slicing through their ranks with lethal precision. But for every creature they destroyed, more emerged from the darkness. Go, Ethan shouted over the chaos. I'll hold them off. Lyra hesitated, her expression torn. You won't survive this alone. Didn't plan on surviving anyway, Ethan said with a smirk. Now move. Lyra's gaze lingered on him for a moment before she turned and sprinted toward the Nexus. The glowing sphere crackled and roared, its energy pulling at her like a living force. Ethan fought with everything he had, his rifle overheating as he fired round after round. The shadow creatures closed in, their claws slashing through the air just inches from his face. At the Nexus, Lyra reached out, her hands trembling as she connected with the core. The moment her fingers touched it, the entire room exploded with light. The creatures froze, their forms flickering as if caught between dimensions. Ethan shielded his eyes, shouting, Lyra, what's happening? She turned to him, her face pale but determined. I'm stabilizing it, but I can't hold it for long. The ground beneath them shook violently, chunks of the ceiling crashing down around them. Ethan realized with dawning horror that the entire base was collapsing. Lyra, we need to go, he yelled, sprinting toward her. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I can't. If I let go, the gateway will open, and it'll all be for nothing. Ethan reached her, grabbing her shoulders. We'll find another way. I'm not leaving you here. Lyra smiled sadly, her hands glowing as she poured her energy into the core. You don't understand, Ethan. This is my purpose. My people need me to finish this, and so does yours. The Nexus pulsed again, brighter this time. The shadow creatures let out an ear-splitting scream before disintegrating into ash. Ethan clenched his fists, his mind racing. Damn it, Lyra. There has to be another way. Take this, she said, pressing a small device into his hand. It's a beacon. It'll lead you to safety. Use it to warn your people. Tell them to fight for something greater than themselves. Ethan's chest tightened as he looked into her eyes, seeing the weight of her decision. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, she said softly. Before he could respond, the Nexus erupted in a blinding explosion of light. The force threw Ethan backward, slamming him into the ground. When the light faded, Lyra was gone. The chamber was collapsing rapidly now, the walls crumbling as the base's energy core imploded. Ethan staggered to his feet, gripping the beacon tightly. As he stumbled through the collapsing corridors, memories of Lyra's fierce determination and unyielding spirit flashed through his mind. She had sacrificed everything to save not just her people, but his as well. When Ethan finally emerged onto the surface, the alien sky was eerily silent. The gateway was gone, the Nexus destroyed, but so was Lyra. He fell to his knees, staring at the beacon in his hand. The weight of her sacrifice pressed down on him like a physical force. Rising slowly, Ethan took a deep breath. He wasn't sure what came next, but one thing was certain. He owed it to Lyra to ensure her sacrifice wasn't in vain. As the first rays of sunlight broke over the alien horizon, Ethan clenched his fists. The war wasn't over, but now he had a reason to fight.